Hi everyone, and welcome back to our ongoing series on how to edit video using DaVinci Resolve. And today is going to be a short one. We're going to take a look at the keyboard shortcuts, how to customize them, how to use them in your edit sessions to really speed up your edit. Let's go. All right, I think what we'll do is just run through a few principles about the keyboard shortcuts in DaVinci Resolve and how by using them you can really speed up your edit. First of all, let's take a look at where you can find the keyboard shortcuts and where to customize them. Let's go up to DaVinci Resolve and choose Keyboard Customization. And there we have a map of the current keyboard shortcuts. But take a look up at the very top corner. You'll notice that by default it shows up with the DaVinci Resolve keyboard shortcuts. But if you are coming from another program and you have built up your muscle memory to use certain keyboard shortcuts the way they've been defined by another program, well, you can easily change that and just start using the Adobe Premiere Pro shortcuts, Apple Final Cut, Avid, and Pro Tools. And in addition to all of those, you can create your own keyboard shortcuts. I came from a program called Edius Pro, and that's not an option here. But I had already customized my keyboard shortcuts anyway. So what I did was simply started with the DaVinci Resolve keyboard shortcuts and then just added a few of mine that I had become used to using from a previous program. Then after I've made the changes, it's just a matter of saving it as whatever name you want. I called it Frank's Keyboard Shortcuts. Now you can take this and export them and move them to another computer. That's good to know. If you've got 2 or 3 computers in your room, your house, and they're all running DaVinci Resolve, well, you can easily, once you've customized on one, export that keyboard shortcut set over to another computer. Now, if you are brand new to video editing and you have not built up any muscle memories for keyboard shortcuts coming from other video editors, you can probably just go ahead with the DaVinci keyboard shortcuts. There's maybe 1 or 2 that I might show you here, not only as a way to how you can customize your keyboard shortcuts, but how it might help you edit just a little bit faster. But before we do that, I just want to point out a couple of principles about keyboard shortcuts. Number 1 is sometimes the keyboard shortcuts are specifically defined to work with a certain focus on your interface, your user interface. So let's say, for example, your focus is up on the inspector panel, and you're trying to use a keyboard shortcut that you usually use down in the video timeline, and it's not working. Well, what you have to first of all do is point your mouse and click on it in the video timeline area, that panel, and that brings your focus from the inspector panel over to your timeline panel, and then your keyboard shortcut that you have defined for the timeline panel will work. And it's the same true is for the different pages. What you might have defined to work on the edit page, that keyboard shortcut may not work over on the Fairlight page. And so that's something to keep in mind. If something isn't quite working for you, it's because that keyboard shortcut probably has not been defined for the area or the panel of focus that you are currently on. All right, the next thing I want to point out is that you probably already know a lot of the keyboard shortcuts for DaVinci Resolve. And you might wonder, well, how? I'm just getting started in DaVinci Resolve. Well, DaVinci has just adopted a lot of the keyboard shortcuts that are used across many different programs. So if you've been using Microsoft Office Suite, for example, and you know Command-C for copy and Command-V for paste, and Command-Z, here in Canada we say Z, is undo, well, because you know that for Office Suite, you can bring all of those over to DaVinci Resolve, and you'll find that you can really speed up a lot of the actions with those keyboard shortcuts that you already know. Command X is a cut, right? Some other keyboard shortcuts that seem to be very common in many programs out there is the space bar will press play. You hit the space bar and your video starts to play. Hit space bar again and it pauses it. You can also learn how to use the JKL keys. That can be very helpful to you. So if you hit the LK, that presses play. If you hit the LK again, that speeds up your play. Hit it again, it's going to speed it up some more. Hitting the K key is going to stop your video. And now when you hit L key, it's going to be regular speed again. Also notice that the J key will play your video backwards. Hit the J key again, and it's going to play your video backwards faster. And so those are some important keys to keep in mind. Now, you might be asking, how am I going to learn all of these keyboard shortcuts and what they do and what function they have? Well, there are charts that you can find online. This map that you see here on your screen as we're working with these might help. There's another way that you can learn keyboard shortcuts, and that is whenever you take your mouse and go up to a menu option at the top of the screen, and let's go up to File, and you'll notice beside most of your menu options there, along on the right-hand side, you'll see the symbols for your keys. Let's say, for example, that you want to save a project with a keyboard shortcut. Well, you can see there that the keyboard shortcut is Command S, which if you are a Office user, you already know that shortcut again. So, like I say, you probably already know many of these shortcuts and you can use them in DaVinci Resolve. But as you start to work with the program over the next few months, you can learn as many keyboard shortcuts as you want by simply taking note of the keyboard shortcut as it appears on any of these menu options, and that may help you learn. I'll have to admit that I certainly don't know all of the keyboard shortcuts in DaVinci Resolve. I'm learning more as I go using this method of taking note of what the keyboard shortcut is alongside of these menu options. Another interesting thing about this is that if you customize the keyboard shortcut, these symbols alongside the appropriate menu option are going to change to reflect the changes that you've made to the customized keyboard shortcut. All right, so how to customize a keyboard shortcut to match something that you either know from before using another program, or you will just find easier to do. Let's look at both. First of all, I like to use the plus and minus keys to expand and contract the timeline. I'm always wanting to zoom into the timeline to get a detailed view of what I'm currently working on, but then I'll want to zoom out on the timeline to get the big picture or find some other place in my project that I want to work on. And so I'm always zooming in, zooming out on the timeline. Well, DaVinci does have keyboard shortcuts to expand and contract the timeline by the DaVinci defaults. And that is you have to hold down the Command key on the Mac and the alternative on the PC, and then use the plus and minus keys. Now, I say plus and minus. It's actually the equals and the dash, because unless you hold the Shift key down, you're not going to get the plus if you were typing a document, right? But I think of them as the plus and minus keys, and so plus expands the timeline, minus contracts the timeline. And that's what I got used to using Premiere Pro, I think is where I first picked that up. And then I customized my Edius keyboard shortcuts to use that same just plus and minus. Well, because my muscle memory and my fingers are just used to hitting the plus and minus keys for that operation and not having to remember to hold down the Command key, I customized my keyboard shortcuts so that it was just the plus and minus keys. Let's show you how to do that. Let's go back to our keyboard customization menu option there and bring this keyboard up. Right now it's showing Frank's keyboard shortcuts. Let's go back as if it was the DaVinci Resolve keyboard shortcuts, and let's just use this as our base and just change a few things as a sample. I'll maybe only do one or two. And the first one we'll do is this expanding the timeline out or contracting it so that we can see more of our project at once. How do we do that? Well, the tricky thing here is to know what DaVinci calls these operations. Every video editing software program out there might have a different term for expanding or contracting the timeline. There is a search button here, so we can try that. We could try expand, and we're not getting any results here. Let's try zoom. I think that is a common word for this operation in some other programs. And sure enough, we're getting some results. Let's check here in view, and let's maybe open up zoom. And yes, we see it here. Zoom in is command equals, and zoom out is command minus. And so how can we change this? Well, you'll see there's a little plus key beside here, and this allows you to add a new keyboard shortcut that will also work for this same operation. And so for zoom out, I'm going to just hit the minus key on my keyboard. It will let you know that that keyboard shortcut is currently signed to a different operation. Do you want to still go forward? Do you still want to select this? And I say yes, I really do want it to be the minus key. Now you have two keyboard shortcuts for the same operation, and you can leave it that way in case you're, sharing your workstation with somebody who is just using the common DaVinci shortcuts. This way it'll work for them and you. Let's change this one up here. The zoom in already has two assigned to it. Let's add one more and just use the, plus or equal key here. And again, it says, this is already assigned to a different operation. Are you sure you want to go ahead? Yes, I am sure. Now, to avoid any confusion or performing operations that you weren't really intending to do, we should probably delete these assignments that these keys were already performing. And we can do that by going over to application here. We see that the two are showing up here. Just click on decrement timecode. And now just by hitting the X key, we can get rid of that. So now that keyboard shortcut is only for zoom out. And let's do it for the other one. Let's go up to our keyboard display up here and just click on the equal key. And again, that shows us the time code that it was set to before. Just click on that and just hit the X. And now that key stroke is only going to zoom in on our timeline. All right, and we can save that, but rather than just save it, let's maybe create our own custom keyboard shortcut with these changes. And so we can go up to the very top corner here where the ... is and select Save as a New Preset and give it whatever name you like. I'll just maybe call it LMS for Learning Media Skills Shortcuts. So hit return, and now you can see it up at the top that we are now working with the keyboard shortcut called Learning Media Skills Shortcuts. Let's close this for now and see if it worked. Let's focus in on the timeline and hit our minus key, and sure enough, it contracts, and plus key expands it out. And now I don't have to hold down two keys to do that operation using two hands. I just need the one hand to do that, which I very much prefer. There's another operation that I perform hundreds of times a day, and that is I select an in and out point, and then I want to do a ripple delete. And that is really a two-step process if you want to delete everything from the in and out marked points for all of the tracks in your project. It's a kind of a two-step process, and DaVinci assigns Well, 3 keys for one of those steps and 2 keys for the other. And I don't know. I prefer having just 1 key to do these operations that I'm performing over and over again, hundreds of times a day. Just give me 1 key for that. And thankfully, DaVinci lets us define that. Let me show you what I mean before we change the keyboard shortcut. Let's say you're editing an interview and you know you've got lots of B-roll to cover up the ums and the ahs, and you want to cut them out, just tighten up the edit quite a little bit. So you find a spot that you want to cut out. You set an in point and you set an out point. Okay, the problem is if I was to hit delete right now, the way this is set up, we would not get a ripple delete. In fact, we would end up deleting the whole selection here that's surrounded by the red. And we don't want that. We just want to cut out this little part that we've put the in and out point. And so what we need to do is tell DaVinci that we want to select the in and out, and we want to select all the video tracks and all the audio tracks. You'll notice because the audio is not also red, that it's coming from a different source. I recorded the lapel audio to a separate audio device, and I've synced up that audio wave file with the camera mic and then deleted the camera audio. So we're just working with the camera video and the audio coming from a different source. So we need to somehow let DaVinci know that we want to cut out this part, both the video and the audio tracks. How can we do that? Well, if we go up to Edit using our mouse and from the drop-down menu, we could first of all choose this option here, Deselect All. I'm not sure why DaVinci calls it this, because really what we're wanting to do is select this area. I think what it's saying is deselect all except for the in and out points, because that's what happens when we use this operation. But notice over here with the keyboard shortcuts, it's 3 keys. And if you're doing this 100 times a day, do you really want to try and find those 3 keys every time with 3 different fingers? Well, I don't anyway. So let's select that, and you'll see that now we've let DaVinci know that we want to select this area, both the video and the audio tracks, and we want to not leave a gap. Like if we just hit the delete key right now, we'd leave this gap, and we'd have to do a second operation where we bring our mouse in here and select that area, make it kind of a grayer area there, and then right click and do a ripple delete. Well, that's just too many steps, right? So let's go back. Let's deselect that again. So we've got that area selected. What we could do again is take your mouse and drag it up and through the drop-down menu and find ripple delete. But that just takes way too much time to use the menu to edit with. We want to use these keyboard shortcuts. But look, oh, it's 2 keys again. We don't want that. But let's just hit it anyway, and we'll see that not only does it delete that section, it brings all of the video that's further down the timeline back. It's what we call a ripple delete. We'll talk more about this when we start teaching you how to edit. A ripple delete. But we want to make that operation a lot faster. So let's go up to our keyboard customization. We see that we're still working with the Learning Media Skills shortcuts. Let's go up to our search bar here. We know the term now because we've seen it in our menu options. It's called deselect, and already we're seeing them show up here. And yes, that corresponds with what we saw up in the menu. Shift Command A, a 3-key shortcut. Can you really call it a shortcut if it's 3 keys? Well, we want to change that. We can either add it first or delete the current one first. Either way is fine. By the way, if you do this by mistake, you can always hit the redo button there and they come back. But what we want to do now is change this to 1 key that will work the best for you. I've chosen the X key. You can choose any key that you want. And the way you do that, you can either point to the X key up here with your mouse and click on it, or you can just hit the X on your keyboard. And we've now made the change. Let's save this. And to confirm that this is really working, let's just go over and point and click to the X key. And we see that it does look like it is already assigned to something else. Funny that didn't give us the warning, but we can get rid of this mark clip by just clicking on mark clip, and it shows up over here, and just delete that. And so now the X key is only going to be assigned to the operation of deselecting all, so that we can have that in and out point selected and everything else not. Okay, so there's that. But then there's also the ripple delete that we want to change from the 2 keys to the 1 key. So let's go up to our search bar and type in ripple delete. And we see them showing up here. Let's do it in the edit. We see that there's 2 already assigned. Let's get rid of these and put in our new key. And again, you can choose one that works for you. I chose the D key. First of all, because I'm deleting, so the D helps me remember that, but also because it's very close to the X. And so when I do this operation that takes 2 steps, the keys are right together, and I can do this operation very quickly. So let's assign the D key. It's telling us that it's already assigned to something else. Well, go ahead and choose it anyway, and then let's go over and click on the D key. And so we see the other operation that it is currently assigned for, and we don't want to have it doing 2 things at once. So let's get rid of the enable clip here. Click on the enable clip. It shows up over here, and just hit the little X there. And now all that D key is going to do is a ripple delete. Let's save this. Let's go back to our timeline and try it out. Let's find another section here. Let's do an in and out. And it looks like this time it automatically deselected all or did it. So, but just to be sure, just hit the X key and the delete key, and we've got it. Try it again. Do an in and an out. We just need to hit the X key, and it does its thing. Hit the D key, and we do a ripple delete. So with just 2 strokes, X and D, I can very quickly do an in and out ripple delete. All right, well, I hope that helps you gain a good understanding of the keyboard shortcuts and how you can customize them in DaVinci Resolve to match either what your fingers are used to using or what you feel is more logical and easier for you as you begin to edit in DaVinci Resolve. If you've enjoyed the video, found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. And if you haven't already done so, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you next time here at, what is this channel? Oh yes, Learning Media Skills. So long for now.